Galt Sportsman's Club in Cambridge, Ontario, with Brian, who's been kind enough to join us. Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, Brian is a former military service member here in Canada and a former colleague of mine and a dear friend as well, who has a great deal of expertise on the firearm that we're going to be talking about today. Right, the AR-15. I think everybody should know before we even begin that all the firearms in this video that you're going to be seeing right now have already been cleared, inspected, and proven safe. The magazines have no ammunition in them, but we thought for the purposes of display that we would bring them out this way. Brian, you know what? I'm going to get you started right here. We've got this one. Right? What am I looking at here?
Well, this is the first generation of the AR-15. This is a Colt SP1, which is the civilian version of the first M16 rifle, semi-automatic only, and 20-round magazine. Of course, the old obvious triangular handguards and the 3-prong flash hider. It's an absolute dream to shoot. Light as anything. It's got the pencil barrel on it. It's a real iconic rifle.
Absolutely. I mean, for the people that are fans of silver screen, what we're looking at is classic Vietnam War era M16 type rifle with this triangular handguard that people don't see anymore. I remember these, in the 80s, people buying these. I mean, it's super lightweight, a lot lighter than most modern rifles that they're putting out today. But it's missing a lot of the features that the ones that later came with, like the fencing around the magazine release, and I mean, like it's missing the forward assist, which I actually like.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, classic though, very light, and a lot of the reasons that we like AR-15s, it's that classic, reliable design. I understand when the first ones came out, they had some problems with the powder. People complained about these guns jamming a lot, and young 19-year-old boys having difficulties with them in combat.
Well, they were told that because they were modern and they were made of new space-age materials that they wouldn't require cleaning.
Yeah.
And of course, they sent them to Southeast Asia, fired thousands and thousands of rounds through them in the jungle environment, didn't clean them, and of course, they didn't work. And of course, their soldiers died because of it. But as soon as cleaning kits were issued and cleaning manuals were issued, the rifles started working better. A couple of the little problems were ironed out. They put a forward assist on it.
Yep.
They became an iconic weapon that worked very, very well.
I'll never get used to this skinny barrel, but we're going to move along.
The really cool thing about that too, Mark, is you'll notice when you shoot it, it's got a very distinct sound.
That spring in your ear?
That 3-prong flash hider gives it a ting when you're shooting. Well, really cool.
Then I'll tell you, this one, I've loved shooting this one, and when you talk about distinctive sounds, with this moderator on the end, and if you want to call it that, it's a mock moderator, it really does throw the sound forward, and it gives it this low-level thump I love. This actually is a reproduction of the Colt XM E2, 177E2, and it's an abbreviated version of this first firearm that we looked at. And of course, this is where they began to use these types of handguards with the ribbing in them. And certainly they shortened up the rifle quite a bit. They had some reliability problems with the first ones. I understand that the addition of the moderator with some baffles, that's technically a suppressor by American standards. Yeah, it would increase the back pressure a little bit and get them to cycle a little more reliably. I love seeing the 20-round magazine in these things. It really does complete that classic look. And again, you've got some features in these guns that have changed over the years. You got this very flat delta ring, and certainly this look is amazing. Love that this one's built out of 1969 parts. Now, of course, we've got this one, which I think would be what now? This is going to be slightly more modern.
Well, that would be the M16A. I believe the A1 or A2. The A1 has the this sight that doesn't have the more advanced rear sight on it. So this would be the M16A1, I believe.
Yep.
In Canada, it would be the C7,
yep.
Just a plain C7. So we use these. We got these in about 89. We started using them. We had plastic magazines for them.
Yep.
And good rifle, accurate, light, reliable, effective. For a 5.56 rifle. You
got to remember, folks, before these types of guns, I mean, back when this was introduced initially, which would have been, it was created actually in the late 50s, but it wasn't put into service until sometime in the 60s.
Yep.
These guns would have been seen like space-age plastic guns. They really weren't well received compared to like, M1 Garands and M14s that fired a much heavier, bullet and had a lot more beef to them, big wooden guns.
Well, and there were rumors went around in Vietnam that they were made by Mattel.
Yeah,
I would say if it's swell because it's made by Mattel.
That's interesting. And did you trust the reliability of that firearm as you were in service?
It got better when we started with the plastic magazines. The plastic magazines weren't reliable. Once we went to the steel magazines, they were great.
And the thing I think that is really important for people to understand is that these are really just generally great firearms. I mean, they're lightweight. They fire a bullet that doesn't generate a lot of recoil. They're easy to clean. They're definitely a maintenance-friendly gun, the way they break down very easily. But more importantly, they're modular. This gun has evolved, and questionably, into one of the coolest guns on the planet, in our opinion, which is why it's so popular in North America. People love this gun because they can do any one of a number of things to it. And I mean, this is obviously a more modern incarnation of the firearm. You got a few items on this thing, like these foreguards that have been placed into, keyed in slots. You got some flip up sights. You got what looks like
it's the Trijicon ACOG.
Trijicon ACOG setup. I mean, you can see over the years the gun continued to evolve. And I mean, obviously the military in the U.S. has continued using them. They still use a version of the XM177 E2 in that M4.
Yeah, well, if you notice this one, Mark II, this one's piston,
Yep.
so it's not direct impingement, meaning
Yep.
the gas is not coming out of the barrel, going down a tube and going right into the bolt. This one, the gas goes down the barrel and hits a piston face here. The piston pushes back on a bolt carrier group.
Yep.
The bolt carrier group is designed slightly differently. No gas goes into the bolt, so you could shoot this, it stays cleaner a lot longer. I will say, however, that it makes the rifle heavier.
Okay.
The addition of that piston does make the rifle a lot heavier, but it's very accurate, very reliable.
Okay, and an effective range of a firearm like that. I mean, for the people that are listening in the U.S. that hunt with it, light game, what would you be looking at?
Well, I mean, the 223 and 5.56 are a small caliber round. I mean, it's considered too small a caliber to hunt deer with in Canada. It's really designed for something more along the size of a coyote or a wolf.
Okay.
But it's you can actively engage targets out to 400 to 500 meters with that rifle. If you know what you're doing, you can go even beyond that. 600 is possible.
Well, I know that people complain that compared to the 308 and the 30-06, it had not quite enough punch from a military's perspective.
Yep.
Certainly it's used in a lot of competitive sports.
Yes, it is.
Three gunners love the AR-15 for a lot of reasons. It is used to hunt in the U.S. and I mean for self-defense. I mean, in the U.S. it's still considered to be one of the more ideal firearms. It's lightweight. It can be used by females. We love actually letting girls shoot these guns.
Well, it's very forgiving.
Yeah.
The recoil on it is not anything to speak of.
And speaking of recoil and lighter bullets, let's move on to something just a little bit different. This is actually a 50 Beowulf, and I actually had a little bit of exposure to this a while back. The 50 Beowulf is a completely different cartridge, and that's one of the other things about these guns I love, is they come in so many different calibers. They have these modular rails that you can put different items on, like optics, lights, scopes. I mean, it's really endless with the AR-15. I mean, and this 50 Beowulf, I mean, I could easily see myself hunting hogs within the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a much heavier, bullet that's moving a lot more slowly, but it weighs probably about 8 times more than an average, right, bullet.
Yeah.
And I mean, just a lot of fun to shoot, but definitely about as much stomp as a 45-70 and a little bit too much for most people. Moving along to this one, right? What you're going to find, folks, is the other thing is the AR-15 is kind of like the Honda Civic, right, of the world of firearms. People do so many different things to customize it, including custom colors. You see things like this, like people really take a lot of pride in building these firearms. I know this gun. I know the person that built it. She is actually very proud of it. It's white. We call it the Stormtrooper gun in the fields, in the circles I travel in, and it's basically a civilian legal, semi-automatic, limited to 5 rounds M4. Right, it would be the equivalent of the American M4.
And here you have the M16A2 rear sight assembly.
Yeah, as these guns evolved, things became a little more adjustable, and certainly they wanted to give people the ability to take that off if they wanted to. The carrying handle has been eliminated from a lot of
guns. You put an optic on it now, or whatever you want to use.
Yeah, and you know what? And this is actually one of my favorites, and it's one we haven't done a spotlight on yet. I'm actually really excited to hold this one. All right, what we have here is the civilian legal semi-automatic version of the Colt 635 carbine. This is a gun that would have been issued to SWAT team members in the mid-'80s.
Yep.
And it would have been a great alternative instead of providing guys with new training on M16, and the MP5 platform. Those members of the services and the military that would be using this sort of thing would already be familiar with all the control layout of an AR-15 style platform, but it was in 9mm, so it would be much more appropriate for indoor use. That's the other thing. I mean, when we talk about different calibers, there's things like 9mm and 45 caliber versions of ARs. I love this one. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun to shoot with a 10.5-inch barrel, and realistically a lot less expensive to shoot as well. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but again, the control layout's completely the same. And of course, for the people who have been around the Canadian gun vault, they all know what the dough is. You fired this one before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, the dough is actually one of my all-time favorite firearms, period. I love this gun. It is the shortest AR-15 that Colt ever came out with. And those of you that watched one of our previous videos will know that this was used to guard plutonium shipments in transit, and it's a real Cold War collectible made with vintage 1985 parts, and I love it. Now, this one, you know what? I'm going to hand you this one. What do you think of this? All right, because I want your professional opinion on this, because I'm going to tell them what it is after. But what do you think of this?
Well, I would say extremely close range, and I don't know how much velocity that bullet's going to maintain once it leaves that tiny little barrel.
Yeah.
But certainly fun range toy, I would guess.
Yeah, you know what? This is a custom that we had brought to us by one of our members. It's chambered in 7.62 by 39. It's got this Cryptek effects all over it. But probably one of the coolest things, I would tell people that this is the only dangerous AR-15 in existence, but for no other reason than the fact that it puts the operator's hand so close to this muzzle that I think that you would threaten to blow your finger off. I'm not sure I'm excited about shooting this one now that I look at it a little more closely. But with a 7.5-inch barrel, it's going to be awful flashy, going to be a lot of fun, and definitely one of the many reasons that we love AR-15s. And of course, with all the custom builds that are out there, no demonstration of AR-15s would be complete without something that makes completely no sense, right? The Masterkey. It's heavy, it's mean, it's ugly. It looks like it belongs in an Aliens movie. I'm actually getting tired holding it. This one was brought to us. It was made by one of our members, and I actually at one point shot an entire metallic silhouette match with it.
Oh, did you?
And yeah, but you know what? I was a little beefier back then during my policing years, and I could manage it. But I did get some sideways looks for this one. We've got a 8.5-inch magazine-fed. I'm gonna reach right out here for a second to get it. Magazine-fed. 12-gauge shotgun. So the intention is that you would be shooting the AR-15, and then you could drop down to here and use the shotgun, which would be used to open up doors.
Yep.
And for the people that actually love the Predator series of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Billy had a version of this gun.
He did, yeah.
And so I've always had kind of an affection for this piece when I've seen it come out to the range. It's a real treat. All right, now that was a lot of fun. You know what, Brian, certainly our audience is always interested in hearing what you have to say. Your thoughts, on what's been happening, and certainly the direction we're heading in with the AR-15s. What are your thoughts? Anything that you'd like to say about this platform?
Well, I mean, I wanted to point out that, I think one of the reasons why people are drawn to the platform, and it's something that law enforcement, military people, and government people don't understand, is that I think a lot of people admire the police and the armed forces, and they want to emulate them, and they like to use the same equipment that those organizations use. And it's a fact of life that many people will never be able to be police officers or soldiers simply for whatever reason. Their lives don't move in that route. But they do have a lot of admiration and respect for them, and they do want to copy or at least take part in some part of the culture. And the AR-15 family of firearms is what those groups use. So that partially explains the popularity and the admiration that the gun community has for this particular item. Furthermore, it's a shame that this particular object is being used as a political tool, because if people don't understand what's going on, this is not about safety, this is not about mass shootings, this is not about any of those things. Any object can be used improperly to cause a great deal of harm. We've seen it with fertilizer, we've seen it with vans, we've seen it with all kinds of other things. If you want to hurt people, you can hurt people. And if you choose to use this device to hurt people, you can hurt people. But the reality is if you're not the kind of person who's going to hurt people, it doesn't matter what you want. You could own anything, even any kind of prohibited device or firearm, and you would never hurt anyone with it. And if you look after it properly, it would never be stolen to hurt anyone with. So what's going on here is that certain people have decided that this issue will garner them some votes, and that those votes will come from one or other side of the political spectrum. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to squeeze a few more votes from that side of the political spectrum. And this government is concerned that it is not going to get reelected in the fall. So it's going to do something splashy and obvious and dramatic in order to get everyone's attention. Oh, we're going to get these guns off the street. It's going to make a big deal. But the reality is most people don't have enough knowledge of these things to understand that this is not going to make any impact on anyone or anything whatsoever.
Yeah, well, you know, I got to tell you, from a, from a point of historical significance, they're fabulous guns. They work really well.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why they're so popular with competitive shooters. I mean, there's so many reasons why tens of thousands of people own these firearms here in Canada. And I mean, realistically, folks, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, so many have been bought in the last few weeks with the news coming that they might be banned, which would be an absolute travesty. I mean, the gun's never been used in a crime. I think there was only one firearm that was used back in the early 80s. One was used in a crime. Beyond that, in that one, it was a non-restricted item. I mean, these things are heavily regulated. They're confined to ranged use only. People of every political stripe, I found, use them, of every ethnicity, every background, every sexual preference.
Well,
so many different people use these firearms today, enjoy them. Females, right?
So two things, Mark. I mean, one, our judicial tradition is
Yes.
based on the idea that you don't hold people responsible for the actions of other people. So if you haven't done anything wrong with your property, your privately owned, legally acquired property, then you should not be held for the transgressions of another person. So that's our legal tradition. You know, and the second thing is that we are the most diverse, inclusive, tolerant, heterogeneous group in Canadian society. We are all races, all colors, all sexes, sexual preferences. We're you know, black and white and every other color under the rainbow. We speak every language under the sun, and we come together and we enjoy our activity. So for us to be accused of being the root of the problem is really the height of hypocrisy.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what? That's about all the time we have for today. I figure we're going to wrap up shortly. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to vote Conservative next election in October 2019. It's really important that we oust this government and get back as many of these rights as we can. And for everybody out there that thinks that they're not rights, they should be.
Yes.
Right? And we're going to do what we can to change that in the future. We've got a very sympathetic ear in the Conservative government. Don't be fooled, right, into thinking that we can go too far too fast. It's really important that we effect some change by replacing the Trudeau government with a good Conservative one in October. All right. Well then, thank you so much, Brian, for being here. All right, folks, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, Canada, don't forget to shoot straight. Stay safe.